Have you ever felt the subtle weight of a presence, a mind so precise, so calculating, that it bends the world around it without a single raised hand? Imagine, for a moment, that every interaction, every glance, every unspoken word carries a hidden current, pulling you, guiding you, shaping your thoughts, your decisions, your very perceptions. What if I told you that the power to command the will of others, to twist the human heart, is not born from force or charisma alone, but from an understanding of the shadows that live within every mind, including your own? To walk this path is to look into the abyss of human desire and fear, and to learn not to flinch, but to step forward with intention, with strategy, with cold clarity. This is the art that Machiavelli revealed, hidden in plain sight, cloaked in history, yet striking at the very core of modern interaction, of control, of dominance. Power, in its most primal form, is never gifted. It is seized, honed, and protected with a precision that borders on obsession. The human mind, brilliant in its complexity yet flawed in its vulnerabilities, is a terrain to be mapped, understood, and navigated. Every instinct, every ambition, every hidden insecurity is a lever, a point of influence. Those who learn to see these levers, who understand the invisible machinery that drives choice and desire, gain the ability to steer reality itself. Machiavelli did not write for the naive. His words are a mirror to the predator that exists in us all, an invitation to harness our intellect against both circumstance and human nature itself. In the quiet corridors of power, manipulation is the most lethal weapon. It is subtle, unseen, a whisper in the mind rather than a strike to the body. Consider the ways people are drawn into illusions they cannot recognize, through fear, through hope, through the intoxicating promise of belonging or reward. The manipulator observes relentlessly, cataloging weaknesses, ambitions, biases. They speak with a tone that feels like honesty while delivering deception as truth. Their gestures, their timing, their language, all are calculated instruments in a symphony of control, and yet, the greatest manipulator does not rely solely on others' ignorance. They command their own mind first. Self-mastery, cold introspection, and ruthless honesty with oneself are prerequisites. Without understanding your own impulses, your own desires, your own fears, you cannot bend others without breaking yourself. Imagine the world as a chessboard, but the pieces are alive, each carrying intentions, secrets, and motives that shift with every move. The ordinary person reacts, the manipulator anticipates. They provoke emotions to obscure reasoning, plant seeds of doubt to cultivate obedience, create crises that force decisions favorable to their design. Sympathy is wielded as a blade, trust is extended as a snare, and always, the manipulator calculates the balance of risk and reward, the precise moment to strike, the subtle push to elicit surrender without confrontation. It is not cruelty for its own sake, it is strategy, the recognition that in the theater of influence, hesitation is fatal, and perception is reality. Human psychology is both a map and a battlefield. Every mind carries contradictions, conflicts between desire and logic, between pride and fear. Machiavelli understood that power is the act of navigating these contradictions. To manipulate effectively, one must recognize the motives that lie beneath the surface, the envy that whispers, the insecurity that festers, the unspoken need that drives behavior. These hidden currents are the language of influence. By listening attentively, observing with precision, and acting decisively, one can shape not just decisions but beliefs, not just actions but identities. Those who cannot see the shadows within others are blinded by the light of their own assumptions, predictable in ways that make them vulnerable. Yet manipulation is not simply about domination. It is a mirror to one's own darkness. Every act of influence forces reflection. How far can you go? Which truths are worth bending? Which lies are tolerable? Machiavelli taught that morality is often subordinate to pragmatism. In this philosophy, intentions are measured by outcomes, not by ideals. The world responds to those who understand the rules, who see the invisible levers, who act where others hesitate. And make no mistake, hesitation is a luxury that the ambitious cannot afford. To act without clarity is to become a pawn. To act with calculation is to become the player, unseen but omnipresent. In the modern world, manipulation is no longer confined to thrones and courts. It infiltrates every arena: business, relationships, politics, social media, even friendship. The principles remain unchanged. Observe, understand, predict, influence, protect yourself from the same forces you wield. To master this is to cultivate an internal coldness, a clarity that allows you to operate above the tumult of emotions, above the noise of instinctual reactions. Emotional detachment is not apathy, it is strategy. By controlling your inner storm, you can navigate the storms of others, shaping circumstances and outcomes without leaving traces of your intent. Fear and desire are twin engines of influence. Every manipulative act exploits one or both. Fear compels action when reason falters. Desire blinds judgment when logic should prevail. The skilled manipulator knows when to stoke apprehension and when to illuminate possibility. They calibrate reactions, nudging the mind toward decisions that serve their purpose while maintaining the illusion of autonomy. Control is most complete when it is invisible, when the guided believes they are choosing freely. This subtlety is the essence of Machiavellian mastery: power without perception, influence without exposure, dominance without overt force. Yet mastery of others is inseparable from mastery of self. Without self-discipline, ambition corrodes. Without self-awareness, strategy becomes arrogance. Without self-control, every tool of influence becomes a weapon against oneself. Machiavelli's lessons are not merely tactical, they are existential. They demand that we confront our own capacity for deception, for ruthlessness, for cold calculation, and to wield these capacities with precision rather than indulgence. The manipulator's strength lies not only in reading others, but in understanding and governing their own shadows, aligning internal power with external effect. History, silent yet unforgiving, bears witness to those who embrace this darkness. They are remembered not only for conquest, but for their intellect, their insight into human nature, their capacity to bend circumstance to will. Theirs is a legacy of strategy, a testament to the potency of insight applied relentlessly. In every maneuver, in every choice, they exemplify the fundamental Machiavellian truth that the world is neither just nor moral but responsive to those who understand its mechanics, who act decisively, and who navigate the currents of human thought with unwavering precision. As you listen now, consider this: the techniques of manipulation, the psychological strategies that govern influence, are not abstract. They are already at play around you, unseen, operating in subtle exchanges, in every negotiation, in every relationship. To be unaware is to be vulnerable. To understand is to reclaim agency. Machiavelli does not offer comfort, he offers insight, a blueprint for those willing to see the world as it truly is, to acknowledge the darkness in themselves and in others, and to move with intention, with strategy, with unyielding awareness. The first step toward true mastery is observation. Not passive, not superficial, but deep, relentless observation. Watch the reactions, the micro-expressions, the contradictions between word and action. Note the habits, the tendencies, the patterns that reveal hidden motives. Every whisper of doubt, every flicker of desire, every shadow of fear is data to be read, a map of human intent. From this observation emerges prediction, and from prediction, influence. It is a progression of clarity, a journey from understanding to control, from perception to power. And yet, there is no guarantee, no formula free from risk. The human mind is mercurial, unpredictable, capable of resistance, of betrayal, of the unexpected. Here lies the ultimate challenge of Machiavellian strategy: to act decisively in a world defined by uncertainty, to embrace risk as a constant companion, and to wield influence without the illusion of certainty. This is not the domain of the timid or the morally unprepared. It is the province of those willing to confront the raw mechanics of desire and fear, to act with precision where others hesitate, to navigate the currents of human psychology with ruthless intelligence. Every encounter becomes a test, every conversation a negotiation of will, every relationship a field in which the mind asserts dominance subtly, invisibly. To succeed is to move without detection, to guide without coercion, to secure outcomes that serve your purpose, while preserving the illusion of autonomy in those you influence. Machiavelli teaches that the measure of skill is not the overt display of power, but the invisible orchestration of events, the quiet shaping of reality in accordance with intent. And so, we arrive at a threshold, a dark mirror reflecting the nature of influence itself. To wield Machiavellian insight is to enter a domain where morality is a tool, perception is reality, and the human psyche is both battlefield and prize. It is a world in which hesitation is fatal and clarity is salvation. To master it, one must embrace not only the strategies of others, but the shadows within, the raw impulses, the hidden desires, the instinctual drives that govern every human thought and action. Now, as you consider the journey ahead, ask yourself, do you have the courage to look beyond the veil, to study the unspoken mechanics of manipulation, to engage with the darkness within yourself and others? For only by seeing clearly, acting decisively, and embracing the cold reality of human nature can one begin to move through the world with the subtle mastery, the strategic precision, and the psychological dominance that Machiavelli exemplified. The path is treacherous, the insights uncomfortable, but the rewards, control, clarity, and power, are absolute. To manipulate another is not merely to bend their will, it is to inhabit their reality long enough to steer it without resistance, to understand the invisible rules that govern their thoughts, their desires, their fears. Machiavelli understood that influence is most potent when it masquerades as freedom, when the guided believes that they act on their own volition. It is the quiet mastery of suggestion, the orchestration of perception, the deliberate shaping of circumstance. And to achieve this, one must first grasp the architecture of the human mind, the scaffolding of thought upon which decisions are built. Every reaction, every impulse, every hesitation can be anticipated, guided, and exploited. But such power requires patience, observation, and the subtlety to act without revealing intent. Consider the principle of scarcity, a tool as ancient as commerce and as lethal as any weapon. Humans are drawn to what is rare, what is limited, what feels beyond reach. The manipulator knows how to use this instinct to create urgency, to provoke desire, to engineer decisions that appear spontaneous but are in fact carefully orchestrated. A promise delayed becomes more potent, a resource withheld becomes more valuable, and an opportunity framed as exclusive commands attention and compliance. This is not coercion. It is psychology, the gentle but inexorable shaping of perception to align with one's purpose. In every choice, in every negotiation, the strategic deployment of scarcity can shift power subtly, invisibly, making others complicit in their own influence. Fear, however, is the tool most ancient, most universal, most effective. It is not brute terror that works best, but a carefully cultivated tension, a whisper of uncertainty that unsettles the mind. Fear focuses attention, sharpens impulses, narrows judgment, and compels action. A manipulator understands the difference between panic and controlled apprehension. By introducing the right amount of uncertainty, the precise hint of danger, the subtle suggestion of risk, one can guide behavior without overt pressure. People will act to avoid imagined threats, to protect reputations, to secure safety or status. They will do what they would not otherwise consider, all while believing they have made the choice freely. To wield fear is to wield influence itself delicately, invisibly, irresistibly. Yet fear alone is insufficient. Desire must accompany it, for humans are creatures of contrast, pulled as much by the promise of gain as by the threat of loss. Desire is a lever, a magnet, a whisper that guides decisions with gentle coercion. It is the promise of recognition, of status, of reward, of belonging. The manipulator balances these twin currents, fear and desire, to create an irresistible flow that leads others exactly where intended. In relationships, in business, in every field where minds are at play, this balance dictates the effectiveness of influence. Too much fear breeds rebellion. Too much desire breeds recklessness. The mastery lies in calibration, in reading subtle cues, in adjusting strategy in real time. Observation is the foundation of all manipulation. The manipulator is always watching, cataloging micro-expressions, tone shifts, posture changes, hesitation, and emphasis. Every detail reveals a fissure in the armor, a vulnerability to exploit, a key to influence. Humans are rarely consistent. Their external behavior often contradicts internal desire. By paying attention to these contradictions, the manipulator gains insight into hidden motives. A smile may conceal contempt, a pause may signal indecision, eagerness may mask fear. Each moment becomes data, each interaction a test, and each subtle signal an opportunity. Mastery of observation allows anticipation of behavior before it manifests, allowing one to act decisively while others react blindly. Timing is equally crucial. Influence is meaningless if delivered at the wrong moment. The manipulator waits, sometimes for hours, sometimes for months, until circumstances align, until the target's defenses weaken, until the desired response becomes inevitable. Impatience is a weakness. Hesitation is vulnerability. Machiavelli understood that victory is often achieved not through brute force but through patience, through the relentless application of insight until the precise moment when influence can be asserted with maximum effect and minimal resistance. The human mind, when nudged at the right instant, becomes pliable, compliant, obedient without ever perceiving the hand that guides it. Language, too, is a weapon. Words are not simply communication, they are architecture, shaping thought as they convey meaning. The manipulator chooses phrases carefully, framing information in ways that direct perception. Ambiguity, suggestion, and rhetorical emphasis are deployed to guide conclusions while maintaining plausible deniability. Questions are more powerful than statements. Pauses carry weight. Compliments can be calculated snares. The voice of influence is always measured, modulated, precise. It bends the listener's understanding without overt assertion, steering belief and behavior with elegance and subtlety. In every conversation, the goal is to shape reality, not merely to convey facts. One of the most insidious techniques is mirroring, the unconscious reflection of behavior, tone, and emotion to engender trust and empathy. Humans are wired to favor those who seem like them, who share their rhythms, their expressions, their moods. A master manipulator exploits this instinct, subtly reflecting mannerisms and language, creating a psychological bond that disarms resistance. Once trust is established, even if artificially, it becomes easier to introduce influence, to guide decisions, to plant ideas, to secure compliance. This is not friendship, it is strategic alignment, a temporary bridge to achieve objectives. The careful observer will note that the most effective manipulators often appear innocuous, even likable, while the inexperienced rely on intimidation or overt pressure, visible and vulnerable. The principle of contrast is another potent tool. Humans judge relatively, not absolutely, by presenting extremes, fear followed by relief, criticism followed by praise, deprivation followed by reward. The manipulator can heighten perception, magnify response, and guide decisions. Contrast creates emotional resonance, amplifies the impact of influence, and conditions behavior over time. A calculated shift in context, a deliberate pairing of opposites, can make a proposal irresistible, a choice unavoidable, a surrender inevitable. It is a method as old as storytelling, yet infinitely adaptable, subtle enough to bypass conscious resistance, powerful enough to bend action to will. Silence, often underestimated, is a strategic instrument. The manipulator knows that words are powerful, but so is the absence of words. Pauses create tension, uncertainty, expectation. They compel the other to fill gaps, often revealing more than intended. Silence is a mirror to the mind of the target, reflecting their own fears, assumptions, and desires back at them, while the manipulator remains calm, collected, in control. The ability to withhold, to wait, to observe in quietude is a hallmark of mastery. Inaction, deployed strategically, is as potent as action, shaping thought and guiding behavior invisibly, with the elegance of a shadow that passes unnoticed but leaves an indelible mark. Manipulation also relies on strategic unpredictability. Predictable patterns invite resistance, subtle variation maintains control. By occasionally defying expectation, the manipulator keeps the mind of the target off balance, vulnerable to suggestion. Humans crave certainty, yet when predictability is disrupted, they become more pliable, more attentive, more suggestible. The careful alternation of behavior, reward and denial, warmth and detachment, engagement and withdrawal, creates a psychological rhythm that lures, entices, and ultimately secures compliance. Control is rarely absolute, yet its exercise is most effective when invisible, perceived not as coercion but as natural consequence. Every manipulative technique carries risk, yet it is through risk that mastery is demonstrated. The manipulator navigates the terrain of human emotion with precision, understanding that exposure, misjudgment, or overreach invites resistance, suspicion, or retaliation. The stakes are always high, the consequences of error are immediate. It is not cruelty that defines mastery, but awareness, strategy, and adaptability. One must constantly evaluate impact, anticipate reaction, and adjust method. Influence is a living system, dynamic, responsive, fragile, requiring both rigor and flexibility. The successful practitioner is neither callous nor careless. They are analytical, detached, and relentless in pursuit of desired outcomes. The most advanced manipulators operate invisibly, creating environments in which the target chooses the desired outcome themselves, believing they have acted independently. This is the apex of Machiavellian strategy, to orchestrate reality so skillfully that compliance appears spontaneous, alignment feels voluntary, and the manipulator's hand is undetectable. By controlling context, shaping perception, and timing influence, one can achieve objectives with elegance and subtlety that leaves no trace of coercion. It is art disguised as circumstance, strategy concealed within freedom, power exercised without apparent force. Yet, the human mind is resilient, and mastery is not absolute. Resistance emerges in subtle forms: hesitation, doubt, rationalization, deflection. The manipulator must anticipate these countercurrents, reinforcing influence through repetition, reinforcement, and layered techniques. Cognitive biases, emotional vulnerabilities, social pressures, all become instruments to sustain compliance, to maintain alignment, to ensure that influence endures beyond the initial interaction. It is a continuous, attentive practice, a perpetual calibration of perception, reaction, and control. To engage in Machiavellian manipulation is to confront a paradox. The closer one comes to understanding others, the more one must confront oneself. Every act of influence reflects knowledge of one's own desires, fears, and ambitions. The manipulator's skill lies not only in shaping external reality, but in achieving internal discipline, emotional intelligence, and self-awareness. Without this, the tools of influence become blunt, erratic, and ultimately self-destructive. Mastery requires reflection, honesty, and rigor, an unflinching examination of one's own motives as well as those of others. In every social arena, every professional context, every personal relationship, these principles unfold. Machiavellian influence is not an abstract theory. It is a framework for understanding, predicting, and guiding human behavior. The techniques: scarcity, fear, desire, observation, timing, language, mirroring, contrast, silence, unpredictability, combine to create a tapestry of subtle control. Applied with precision, they render complex interactions navigable, outcomes predictable, and influence nearly absolute. Applied without care, they expose the manipulator to the very forces they seek to command. The distinction lies in mastery, in knowledge, patience, subtlety, and relentless attention to human psychology. And so, as we step further into the labyrinth of Machiavellian strategy, one truth becomes unavoidable. Every mind is both terrain and instrument, every interaction an opportunity, every choice a lever to be understood, anticipated, and guided. The journey through manipulation is not a moral exercise. It is a study of reality, of human nature, of the delicate mechanics that govern thought, emotion, and behavior. Those who master it gain power, clarity, and control. Those who ignore it surrender agency, blind to currents that shape their lives, their decisions, their destinies. The shadows of human thought are dense, intricate, and relentless. And yet, in understanding them, one discovers not only the means to influence others, but the path to absolute self-mastery. A disciplined mind, a keen perception, a strategic presence capable of navigating the most complex, treacherous, and emotionally charged landscapes of human interaction. To walk this path is to embrace both knowledge and discipline, cunning and restraint, insight and patience. The dark psychology of Machiavelli is not merely a set of techniques. It is a philosophy of power, a blueprint for understanding, and an invitation to step into a reality governed by strategic thought, psychological insight, and deliberate influence. To understand manipulation at its highest level, you must step beyond the realm of simple tactics and into the architecture of human reality itself, because true power is not in controlling actions, it is in controlling the meaning behind those actions, shaping the lens through which others interpret the world. Every human being carries within them an inner narrative, a fragile and ever-shifting story about who they are, what they deserve, what they fear, and what they long for. The master manipulator does not fight this narrative, they infiltrate it. They become a voice inside the target's internal monologue, an invisible author rewriting motivations, expectations, and beliefs from within. This is where Machiavelli becomes more than a political philosopher. He becomes a psychologist of shadows, teaching how influence becomes indistinguishable from self-perception, how a mind can be guided without ever suspecting intrusion. The first truth of advanced manipulation is that people do not see the world as it is. They see it as they are. Their biases, insecurities, wounds, ambitions, and limitations distort every piece of information they absorb. To manipulate effectively is to understand these distortions and feed them with precision. You do not push a mind in a direction it resists. You guide it where it is already weak, where it already wants to go, where its defenses are softest. You become an ally to their desires and an architect of their fears. You give shape to the emotions they cannot name, clarity to the impulses they barely recognize. In this way, your influence becomes a mirror they willingly stare into, unaware that it reflects not their truth, but the truth you have chosen for them. Consider the subtle art of identity influence, perhaps the most dangerous form of manipulation. Humans protect their identities with a ferocity they rarely apply to their own well-being. Challenge their self-image and they resist. Reinforce their self-image and they obey. The manipulator uses this to create allegiance. Praise the qualities they want to believe they possess: strength, loyalty, intelligence, and they will strive to embody them, not because you commanded it, but because you validated the version of themselves they cling to. Undermine qualities they fear within themselves: weakness, incompetence, irrelevance, and they will work tirelessly to avoid appearing guilty of them. In this way, manipulation becomes self-enforcement. You plant the narrative, and they police themselves to uphold it. This is not control through force, it is control through identity. But identity is only one layer of the psychological architecture. To truly dominate the mental battlefield, you must master emotional priming, the deliberate conditioning of another's emotional state to guide decision-making. A calm mind thinks logically, a triggered mind reacts impulsively, an insecure mind seeks validation, an anxious mind seeks protection, a proud mind seeks dominance, a lonely mind seeks connection. Every emotion is a doorway, and the manipulator decides which one to open. A slight criticism given at the right moment can destabilize confidence. A well-timed compliment can anchor trust. A moment of silence can induce uncertainty. A fabricated conflict can force dependence. The mind responds not to reality but to perception. By shaping perception, you shape emotion. By shaping emotion, you shape behavior. Deception, at the highest level, is rarely about lies. Lies are fragile, they require maintenance, they risk exposure, they demand consistency. True deception is the art of selective truth, the careful arrangement of realities that guide conclusions without ever violating facts. You reveal just enough to elicit the response you desire. You show one angle and hide another. You frame events in a way that leads the mind to misinterpret naturally, without suspicion. This is the secret Machiavelli understood. The most powerful deception is the one that allows the target to deceive themselves, to draw the conclusions you want them to draw, believing they are thinking independently. A lie can be challenged. A self-generated belief becomes a fortress. Dominance dynamics emerge in every interaction, whether acknowledged or not. Humans instinctively scan for hierarchy: who leads, who follows, who yields, who asserts. The manipulator does not declare dominance, they establish it quietly, consistently, through presence, tone, timing, and certainty. Confidence, when authentic or convincingly imitated, becomes gravity. Others orbit around it, drawn by the stability it represents. Ambiguity weakens influence, clarity strengthens it. To dominate is not to force submission but to create an atmosphere where your authority feels natural, inevitable, unquestioned. This is done not through aggression but through psychological asymmetry, knowing more, revealing less, anticipating moves before they are made. The dominant mind is always 2 steps ahead, observing the landscape while others focus narrowly on the moment. Understanding leverage is essential. Every person has something they fear losing, something they desperately want, something they cannot afford to confront. These points are leverage, not for cruelty, but for influence. A person motivated by approval can be controlled through validation. A person terrified of abandonment can be controlled through presence and withdrawal. A person obsessed with reputation can be guided through suggestion and implication. A person driven by ambition can be directed with opportunity and exclusivity. Leverage is not about exploitation. It is about understanding what shapes another's decisions more powerfully than logic ever could. You do not coerce with threats. You influence with pressure applied precisely where it destabilizes certainty. To manipulate effectively, you must also understand the social battlefield. Humans are herd creatures. Their instincts for belonging, comparison, and hierarchy govern much of their behavior. Use this. Create alliances that isolate your target. Build narratives that place you at the center of their emotional ecosystem. Become the arbiter of their value by controlling who sees them, who praises them, who criticizes them. Social proof becomes a weapon. The opinions of others become silent chains. People crave acceptance and fear rejection with primal intensity. By positioning yourself as the gateway to belonging, or as the barrier against isolation, you secure influence that feels natural, even necessary, to the target. This is not manipulation through force, but through social architecture. One of the most advanced forms of manipulation is emotional contrast, using emotional highs and lows to condition dependence. A predictable environment breeds independence. An unpredictable one breeds attachment. When someone never knows which version of you they will receive, they become increasingly focused on earning your approval, easing your tension, securing your presence. This creates a psychological dependency, a fixation, a need to restore equilibrium. It is the same mechanism that keeps gamblers addicted, the unpredictable reward pattern. The manipulator controls the rhythm, warmth followed by coldness, attention followed by distance, validation followed by challenge. Each shift reinforces the target's emotional investment, deepening the psychological tether. Manipulation is not purely interpersonal, it is strategic. The master manipulator operates across time, not just moments. They play long games, letting seeds of influence take root slowly, subtly, until the target's actions align with their agenda naturally, inevitably. Patience becomes a weapon, restraint becomes strength. The novice manipulator demands immediate results and loses power. The master influences gradually, invisibly, through accumulated emotional momentum. This is why Machiavelli warned against impulsive strategy. True control arises from understanding not just the moment, but the trajectory of a mind over weeks, months, years. Influence grows like a shadow, expanding quietly until it covers everything. The paradox of manipulation is that it requires sincerity, not in intention but in execution. People are deeply sensitive to inconsistency, to falseness, to forced emotion. To deceive convincingly, you must feel what you portray, at least momentarily. The mind mirrors authenticity, even when weaponized. A well-placed sigh, a moment of vulnerability, a flash of frustration, all can serve strategic purposes if delivered with the emotional nuance that reality carries. This is why manipulative mastery requires emotional intelligence as much as cold strategy. You must understand the rhythm of human feelings, the ebb and flow of emotional states, the micro-expressions that betray truth. The greatest manipulators are great actors, not because they fake emotions, but because they invoke them deliberately. A critical element of advanced Machiavellian manipulation is controlled unpredictability, not chaos, but subtle deviation from expectation. Predictability makes you safe, but ineffective. Total unpredictability makes you threatening and untrustworthy. The ideal balance is intermittent inconsistency. Small, strategic surprises that keep others attentive, invested, cautious. A sudden shift in tone, a moment of unexpected vulnerability, a sudden withdrawal of attention, all force the target to recalibrate, to reconsider, to focus on you with heightened sensitivity. This creates psychological primacy. You become the central figure in their mental landscape, the variable they cannot ignore. Once this primacy is established, influence becomes effortless. Another powerful technique is narrative reframing, the ability to redefine events in a way that shifts emotional meaning. People are not motivated by events, but by their interpretation of events. A failure can be framed as betrayal or as opportunity. A criticism can be framed as an attack or as guidance. A risk can be framed as necessity or danger. The manipulator becomes the interpreter of reality, shaping emotional responses through selective framing. By controlling the narrative, you control perception. By controlling perception, you control behavior. Perhaps the most dangerous form of manipulation is the cultivation of false dependency, the engineered belief that the manipulator provides something essential: stability, validation, protection, clarity, opportunity, emotional fulfillment. Once dependency is formed, autonomy dissolves. The target begins to consult, to rely, to seek approval, to adjust behavior according to perceived expectations. You become the axis around which their decisions revolve. The manipulator does not seize control. The target gives it willingly, fearing the loss of the relationship more than the loss of autonomy. This is where influence becomes near irreversible. Yet the manipulator must always remember the final rule: influence is fragile. Power is delicate. One misstep, one exposure, one moment of overreach can shatter the entire structure. The greatest manipulators are never reckless. They are intentional. They do not manipulate for vanity, but for purpose. They do not seek control for amusement, but for strategy. They do not reveal their insights casually, but conceal them behind humility, charm, or silence. The less others know of your awareness, the more freely they reveal themselves. The less they suspect your influence, the more deeply it takes root. The world is not governed by truth, but by perception; not by morality, but by motive; not by fairness, but by force applied with subtlety. Machiavellian dark psychology is not a set of tricks. It is a worldview. It demands observation without emotion, influence without guilt, strategy without hesitation. It is a study of the human animal beneath the facade of civility, the primal forces that shape our hidden choices. Once you understand these forces, once you learn to navigate them with precision, you gain access to a realm of power that few ever glimpse, let alone command. Every person you encounter carries a fortress of vulnerabilities masked by confidence, a world of fears disguised by composure, a labyrinth of desires hidden beneath restraint. They walk through life unaware of the levers embedded in their psychology, blind to the strings that guide them, oblivious to the shadows that shape their decisions. The manipulator sees these things, quietly, clearly, relentlessly. They move through the world with eyes that pierce the veil, ears that detect the cracks in every sentence, instincts that sense the emotions others bury beneath practiced expressions. This is the essence of advanced Machiavellian manipulation: not loud, not forceful, not violent, simply inevitable. A force woven into perception, emotion, identity, and belief. Subtle enough to go unnoticed, powerful enough to change the trajectory of lives. To master it is to step into a different world, a world where influence becomes power, and power becomes destiny, shaped by the mind that understands what others refuse to see. There comes a moment in every ascent to power when the air thins, when the world grows quieter, when the people who once surrounded you with noise and praise begin to drift away, leaving behind only those who serve a purpose and those who pretend to. This is the altitude where the weak suffocate and the strong learn to breathe differently. Machiavelli understood that the higher you climb, the more your survival depends not on what you show, but what you conceal, not on what you declare, but what you quietly, relentlessly engineer beneath the surface of perception. Power is not merely the throne you sit on, it is the invisible lattice of fear, desire, and perception that sustains that throne. And this is where dark psychology becomes a weapon rather than an academic observation. It is here that manipulation is not a trick but an architecture, a design carved into the minds of others long before they ever realize they have stepped into a structure built entirely by your will. As you rise, people study your moves. They trace the outline of your actions, searching for clues to your intentions. But the secret is that you are not what they see. You are the misdirection. You are the shifting shadow that forces their minds to draw the wrong conclusions. Manipulation begins not with lying to others, but with teaching them how to lie to themselves. When someone believes they understand you, they stop guarding themselves. When someone thinks they can predict you, they relax into the comfort of assumption. Machiavelli instructs you to never allow that. He urges you to become fluid, unpredictable, unreadable. Stability is a luxury for the powerless, but the powerful must be a storm, formless, ever-changing, too vast for anyone to grasp. You must learn to weaponize ambiguity. People fear what they cannot define. They respect what they cannot predict. They obey what they cannot fully understand. The less certain they feel about your next move, the more they cling to the version of you that benefits their hopes or eases their anxieties. Some will see you as a savior, others as a threat. Both interpretations serve you as long as neither is accurate. And when you sense that someone is beginning to draw too close to the truth, you do not push them away. No, you pull them closer, draw them into your warmth, confuse them with kindness until their suspicion melts and their vigilance dissolves into gratitude. The closer they stand, the less they see. Distance creates clarity, proximity blinds. There is, however, a darker art within this philosophy, one that Machiavelli hinted at but rarely spoke of directly: the manipulation of emotional hunger. Humans are starving creatures, always searching for validation, purpose, security, control. If you understand what someone hungers for, you control them. Every person is governed by a wound, a longing, a fear. They hide it from the world, sometimes even from themselves, but they wear it in their tone, their posture, their patterns. The key is to observe without appearing to observe. Listen not to their words but to the cracks between them. Watch not how they behave when they are watched, but how their mask slips when silence corners them. Once you identify their hunger, you become the only source that can feed it. If they crave approval, give them a taste and then withhold it. If they crave importance, make them feel irreplaceable, but only within a role that benefits your design. If they crave security, offer protection that subtly binds them to your authority. If they crave dominance, give them a battlefield where they can win, but only battles that serve your larger victory. People mistake manipulation for coercion, but the deepest manipulation does not force people to act against their interests. It convinces them that your interests are theirs. They will follow you willingly, passionately, loyally, because you have aligned yourself with the story they secretly wish to be true. But manipulation is not merely about gaining control, it is about maintaining it. And maintaining control requires an understanding of leverage. Every relationship, every alliance, every interaction contains a balance of power that shifts based on perception. If someone believes they need you, they will obey you. If someone believes you need them, they will betray you. It is essential that you never allow anyone to feel indispensable. And if they begin to believe it, you must gently, subtly correct them. Introduce alternatives. Create silent competition. Allow them to witness how easily you can shift your attention to someone else. People desire what they fear losing. Their desperation reawakens their loyalty. But do not confuse leverage with cruelty. Cruelty is sloppy. Cruelty is emotional. Cruelty exposes your hand. A true strategist does not need to wound openly. You can tighten your control with gestures so delicate they appear like kindness. The art of dark psychology is the art of concealment. Your intentions must be the last truth anyone uncovers, and by the time they do, their dependence on you must be irreversible. Yet, the most dangerous enemy you will encounter during your rise is not the ambitious rival nor the deceitful ally. It is your own ego. Power distorts perspective. Praise numbs the senses. Confidence becomes a drug that quiets your vigilance. Machiavelli warns you to distrust praise, to question loyalty, to doubt applause. Admiration is often transactional. People praise you because they need something from you. Their loyalty is not to you, it is to their benefit. And the moment your fall begins, the hands that once applauded will be the first to push you deeper into the abyss. For this reason, you must never stop studying people. You must never stop anticipating betrayal. You must never stop sharpening the blade of perception. The world becomes quieter at the top, yes, but it also becomes more lethal. Every smile carries a question. Every favor carries a price. Every ally carries a potential threat. And yet, this is not paranoia, this is strategy. To foresee betrayal is to neutralize it before it manifests. To anticipate manipulation is to counter it before it unfolds. To understand deception is to wield it more skillfully than those who would use it against you. This is why you must develop emotional distance. You must observe your own emotions as though they belong to someone else. When anger arises, do not react, analyze. When fear whispers, do not run, listen. When desire tempts you, do not indulge, study the weakness it reveals. You are not your impulses. You are the architect of your impulses. Emotional discipline is the foundation of psychological power. Without it, you are a puppet pulled by strings you refuse to acknowledge. With it, you become the puppeteer, orchestrating outcomes with precision, clarity, and intention. But there is a deeper truth, a darker truth, that many fear to face. Manipulation does not require you to be heartless, it requires you to be strategic with your heart. Empathy is not a weakness. Empathy is an instrument. To understand someone's emotional world is to access the control panel of their mind, but empathy must be detached. You feel what others feel so you can guide their emotions, not be guided by them. You understand their fears so you can direct their choices. You recognize their desires so you can shape their actions. This is the paradox at the center of all dark psychology. The more deeply you understand others, the more invisibly you control them. And, as your influence expands, you will notice something unexpected. People reveal more in silence than in speech. Silence terrifies most humans. It forces them to confront themselves, their uncertainties, their hidden motives. When you withhold your reactions, your words, your approval, they begin to unravel. They fill the silence with their own anxieties, their own assumptions, their own confessions. Silence becomes a mirror that exposes them, and a mirror is the most powerful interrogation tool in existence. To master manipulation is to master timing. You must know when to speak and when to withhold, when to reward and when to retract, when to protect and when to abandon, when to illuminate your presence, and when to vanish into calculated absence. Power is not found in constant action. It is found in the orchestration of moments, in the precision of influence, in the ability to shift the emotional climate of a room simply by entering or leaving it. And yet, beneath all of these techniques, beneath all the strategies, the psychological plays, the carefully crafted illusions, there lies a deeper layer of truth, a truth Machiavelli understood better than anyone. Manipulation is not about controlling others. It is about controlling the environment in which they make decisions. It is about shaping the context, influencing the narrative, guiding the emotional landscape until the choices they make lead them exactly where you want them to go, without ever realizing they were guided there. This is the heart of dark psychology. This is the essence of Machiavellian power. And as you move through the world armed with these principles, you will begin to see how easily people betray themselves, how quickly they surrender their independence, how willingly they submit to the invisible hand that shapes their fears and feeds their desires. The world becomes transparent. People become predictable. Strategies become instinctive. Influence becomes effortless. But the climb is not over. There are deeper layers still waiting. Techniques that turn enemies into instruments, resistance into fuel, conflict into opportunity. And as you approach the next stage of power, the stage where influence becomes domination, where manipulation becomes mastery, you will learn the final lessons Machiavelli reserved for those who dared to rise beyond their humanity and step into the realm of rulers. There is a moment in the evolution of power when influence is no longer enough, when subtle manipulation no longer satisfies, when guiding the thoughts of others becomes too passive, too slow. It is the moment when you no longer wish merely to shape the minds of people, you wish to reshape the entire reality they inhabit. This is the stage where Machiavelli's philosophy sharpens into something more ruthless, more refined, more dangerous. It is the stage where you rise from strategist to architect, from manipulator to sovereign. To reach this level, you must understand a truth most people spend their entire lives running from. Human beings do not live in the world as it is, they live in the world as they perceive it, and perception can be bent, twisted, sculpted. The human mind can be redesigned like a landscape. The key is not to change the person, it is to change their environment, their incentives, their emotional climate, their narrative. When you alter the reality around someone, their choices become predictable, their reactions become controllable. Their sense of autonomy becomes an illusion you allow them to keep. This is the essence of high-level manipulation, not influencing actions, but influencing the framework in which actions are formed. You do not push people, you tilt the floor beneath them. You do not force choices, you arrange the illusion of options. You do not fight resistance, you remove the conditions that create it. And as you refine this craft, you begin to see that the most powerful form of control is not domination but dependence. People are not loyal because of who you are, they are loyal because of what they need. And once you become the source of what they cannot live without, certainty, purpose, identity, emotional stability, protection, you will no longer need to command them. They will command themselves. But the path to creating dependence is delicate. It begins with understanding that people crave two contradictory things, freedom and guidance. They want to feel independent, yet they want someone to lead them. They want autonomy, yet they fear responsibility. They want power, yet they fear what power demands. This internal contradiction is the crack through which influence flows. Offer someone too much freedom, and they drown in uncertainty. Give them too much direction, and they suffocate in confinement. The art lies in giving them enough freedom to feel in control, enough guidance to feel safe, enough uncertainty to keep them seeking your approval, and enough reward to make their pursuit feel worthwhile. This balance creates a psychological cage with invisible walls. A person trapped in such a cage does not attempt to escape because they do not know they are confined. They believe their loyalty is their choice. They believe their obedience is their idea. They believe their dependence is love, respect, admiration, duty, anything except what it truly is. And that is the genius of subtle domination. It hides itself inside the victim's sense of agency. But to achieve this level of control, you must first learn to master the darkest currency of human psychology, fear. Not overt fear. Coercion is loud, disruptive, inefficient, but silent fear. The fear beneath the threshold of conscious awareness, the fear of losing access to your approval, your attention, your protection. People fear abandonment more deeply than they fear pain. They fear insignificance more intensely than they fear punishment. They fear uncertainty more profoundly than they fear suffering. When someone fears losing your presence, you no longer need to make them obey. Their fear will do the work for you. Yet fear alone is not enough. If you rely solely on fear, you become a tyrant, and tyrants fall because people eventually unite against pain. What you must learn is the alternating rhythm of psychological power, fear and relief, withdrawal and reward, uncertainty and warmth. This rhythm conditions the mind to attach itself to you. A person who experiences intermittent validation becomes addicted to its possibility. They begin to chase your approval, to calibrate themselves to your reactions, to revolve around your emotional climate. They lose their stability and replace it with you. This is the moment you become not a person in their life but the axis of their reality. But there is a more refined method still, a method Machiavelli understood intuitively, the power of identity shaping. People act consistently with who they believe they are. If you influence their identity, you influence everything they do without needing to touch the specifics. Identity is the deepest lever of control, and people adopt identities not through logic, but through emotion. If you make someone feel admired, understood, valued for a certain trait or role, they will cling to it. They will defend it. They will mold their behavior to protect the version of themselves you have validated. Tell a person they are loyal, and they will bend their life around proving you right. Tell them they are strong, and they will endure suffering to maintain that image. Tell them they are chosen, and they will sacrifice everything to remain chosen. You are not manipulating the person. You are manipulating the story they tell themselves about who they are. But do not mistake identity shaping for flattery. Flattery is transparent and shallow. Identity shaping is deeper, quieter, more intimate. It is delivered subtly, strategically through small acknowledgements, rare moments of recognition, precise emotional calibrations. It is not constant praise. It is selective reinforcement, given only when it strengthens the identity you want them to adopt. Too much praise weakens control. Too little weakens attachment. You must apply it like a toxin, measured, potent, rare. As you ascend further, you will discover that there is an even more advanced principle, one that few ever realize. People's actions are driven far more by their need to avoid psychological pain than by their desire for pleasure. This means that if you can attach negative emotional consequences to the behaviors you do not want, and positive emotional consequences to the behaviors you do want, you become the silent sculptor of their choices. You do not punish them openly. You let disappointment speak in your silence. You do not reward them openly. You make them feel seen in moments that matter. You do not confront their mistakes. You allow their guilt to sharpen itself in the quiet space of your absence. This is not cruelty. It is precision. People discipline themselves more effectively than you ever could when you understand how to trigger the emotional mechanisms that do the work for you. But with greater power comes greater exposure. And this is where you must learn the Machiavellian doctrine of controlled vulnerability. Too much strength breeds envy. Too much coldness breeds distrust. Too much superiority breeds rebellion. A ruler who appears invulnerable invites conspiracy. But a ruler who reveals small, strategically chosen vulnerabilities disarms enemies and binds followers. Vulnerability breaks the illusion of distance, making people feel closer to you, more connected, more sympathetic. But the key is to reveal only vulnerabilities that cost you nothing yet give you everything. You show a flaw that does not weaken your position. You reveal a struggle that humanizes you without reducing your authority. You confess a fear that makes people feel trusted, while concealing the fears that would make you weak. This false vulnerability creates emotional intimacy without sacrificing power. People trust you more, defend you more, forgive you more. They believe they see the real you, even though the real you remains hidden beneath layers they will never penetrate. And as you perfect these arts, you will begin to notice a subtle shift. People will seek your guidance even when you have nothing to offer. They will ask for your opinion even when you remain silent. They will anticipate your reactions, your preferences, your judgments, shaping themselves around the image they believe you will approve of. This is not influence, it is psychological orbit. You have become the gravitational center that dictates the movement of their emotional universe. But you must never become complacent. Power is not a destination, it is a balancing act. The moment you stop tightening your grip, someone else begins loosening it. The moment you stop studying motives, someone else begins studying yours. The moment you stop anticipating betrayal, a betrayal is already forming. Machiavelli's warning echoes through time. Power attracts rivals the way light attracts shadows. The stronger you grow, the stronger your enemies become. And the greatest enemy is always the one who hides their ambition beneath humility. The quiet ones, the patient ones, the ones who do not compete openly. These are the threats you must watch most closely, for they study your methods, learn your weaknesses, mirror your strengths. This is why you can never stop evolving. The manipulator who relies on old techniques becomes predictable. Predictability is vulnerability. The essence of enduring power is adaptation. You must remain fluid, like water that takes the shape of its container yet can also carve stone. You must shift between warmth and coldness, presence and absence, certainty and ambiguity, strength and softness. People must never be able to pin you down. They must never feel they fully understand you. Mystery is protection, distance is armor, ambiguity is advantage. And as you refine yourself into this evolving, adaptive, elusive force, you will reach a final, dangerous truth. The most powerful form of control is not controlling others at all. It is controlling yourself so absolutely that others instinctively follow your lead. Self-mastery radiates an authority that manipulation alone cannot replicate. When you control your emotions, people trust your stability. When you control your reactions, people fear your unpredictability. When you control your desires, people crave your approval. When you control your impulses, people surrender to your discipline. You become the mirror that amplifies their inadequacies and the anchor that stabilizes their chaos. They align themselves with you not because you force them, but because they sense that in your presence, they are either elevated or destroyed. This is the pinnacle of dark psychology. This is the level where manipulation becomes effortless, where influence becomes instinctive, where dominance becomes quiet. You are no longer playing the game. You are the game. And the world bends itself around your gravity. There comes a stage in the ascent of power where the air grows thin not because of altitude, but because of the weight of the decisions you now command. The farther you rise, the more reality begins to bend slow and respond to your presence. People watch you differently. They listen differently. They adjust themselves before they speak, afraid that the wrong word might reveal something they have tried hard to hide. They sense that you are no longer merely a participant in the world. They sense that you have become an architect of it. But with this transformation comes a tension few can survive, the tension between the world as it is and the world as you intend it to be. And the distance between these worlds is not crossed with hope, morality, or goodwill. It is crossed with willpower sharp enough to cut through illusions, discipline cold enough to silence doubt, and inner strength ruthless enough to reshape fate itself. Machiavelli understood this better than anyone. He knew that once you reach this level, every movement you make carries consequences far beyond your vision. Every decision creates ripples that touch enemies you've never met and allies you never trusted. Every hesitation becomes an invitation for attack. Every display of doubt becomes fuel for rebellion. And this is why, at the summit of power, there is no room left for the softness that governed you when you were weak. There is no space left for the illusions you once needed to comfort yourself. At the top, the world becomes brutally honest. It reveals itself without filters, without softness, without mercy. It becomes a battlefield, and you either dominate it or you are consumed by it. But there is something deeper that unfolds here, something darker. You begin to realize that every person you have manipulated, shaped, or controlled has left a trace on you as well. You study their fears so deeply you begin to see the shadows in your own. You observe their desires so precisely you begin to notice the hunger in your own voice. You witness their betrayals so consistently you begin to anticipate the betrayals forming inside you. You become both observer and observed, predator and prey, ruler and prisoner. For in mastering the psychology of others, you inevitably confront the labyrinth of your own mind. And if you do not master it, it will turn on you with more ferocity than any external enemy ever could. That is why the final and highest form of power, the form Machiavelli never wrote explicitly but implied in every line, is the conquest of oneself. Not the suppression of emotion, but the command of it. Not the absence of fear, but the harnessing of it. Not the denial of desire, but the orchestration of it. For when you reach a certain level of influence, the only enemy left capable of destroying you is the part of yourself you refuse to face. The impulsive part, the naive part, the self-doubting part, the part that seeks validation, love, comfort, recognition. These are relics of a weaker world, remnants of an earlier version of you, and if you let them linger, they will become cracks in your armor. And cracks do not stay small, they widen, they spread, and eventually they shatter you. To rise to the final tier of Machiavellian power, you must shed these remnants like old skin. You must become someone who does not seek validation, because you understand that validation is beneath you. Someone who does not fear loss because loss is merely the clearing of space for something greater. Someone who does not crave comfort because comfort is the anesthetic of the powerless. Someone who does not need recognition because recognition is a mirror for those who have yet to see themselves clearly. You must become sovereign over the one battlefield that determines all others, the battlefield within. And as you fortify your inner world, something extraordinary begins to happen. The noise of the external world starts to fade. The manipulations of others lose their grip. The chaos around you slows. You begin to respond rather than react. You begin to choose rather than obey impulse. You begin to see through deception as easily as glass. You begin to predict outcomes not because you are guessing, but because you understand the architecture of human nature so deeply it becomes instinct. And this is the moment when you stop being merely Machiavellian. You become inevitable, yet there is one final truth, one final ascent, one final transformation before the story of your power becomes complete. It is the truth that separates the rulers of eras from the rulers of moments, the architects of destiny from the victims of circumstance. It is the truth that Machiavelli reserved only for those willing to step into the coldest chamber of power. And that truth is this: power is meaningless unless it is used. Your mind can be sharp as a blade, but a blade that never cuts is just metal. Your insight can be deep as the ocean, but an ocean that never moves is just water. Your strategic brilliance can outshine kings, generals, and tyrants, but brilliance without action is just potential rotting in silence. At the end of every philosophical conclusion, at the end of every psychological revelation, at the end of every manipulative strategy, there comes a single decisive moment when you must step forward and act. Not because the world will allow it, not because the timing is perfect, not because permission was granted, but because you decide that this is the moment you seize what was always meant to be yours. Power expands only through decisive movement. Influence multiplies only through bold action. Authority crystallizes only through choices that terrify the weak, but liberate the strong. And so, as you stand on the threshold of the world you intend to create, you must ask yourself the question that every ruler has faced. Whether they admitted it or not, will you continue observing life from the shadows of caution, or will you step into the arena and claim the territory the hesitant will never dare to touch? For the world will not give you power, it will not hand you respect, it will not grant you dominance, it will not reward you simply for thinking, dreaming, or preparing. The world bows only to those who command it to. And the moment you grasp this truth, the moment you internalize it so deeply that it becomes your nature, you stop being shaped by the world and begin shaping it. You stop hoping for opportunity and begin creating it. You stop waiting for the right moment and declare that the right moment is the one you choose. This is the final evolution of Machiavellian mastery, the moment when your voice becomes command, your presence becomes force, your decisions create consequences that others must adapt to. when you no longer maneuver through the world as a strategist alone, but as a sovereign mind, one who does not simply survive power, but wields it with precision, clarity, and unapologetic intent. And if you truly wish to walk this path, if you truly wish to rise beyond the millions who dream but never rise, if you truly wish to embody the dark strategic brilliance that reshapes the landscape of your existence, then you must make one final shift, one final choice, the choice that all greatness depends on. Stop waiting, stop fearing, stop hesitating, stop negotiating with your weaker self. Stop allowing the world to define your boundaries. Stop surrendering your potential to the comfort of excuses. Stop pretending you need permission to become powerful. The time for subtlety has passed. The time for someday has expired. The time for restraint is over. Your life will belong to someone, either to the world that seeks to control you, or to the self you choose to become. Your power will be claimed by someone, either by those who manipulate you or by you yourself. Your destiny will be authored by someone, either by the forces that shaped your past, or by the will you carve into your future. So make the choice that transforms everything. Step forward with the cold clarity of someone who no longer asks, hopes, or waits. Seize control of your mind, your environment, your story, your fate, and become the force that bends reality instead of the shadow that obeys it. Because no one is coming. No one will save you. No one will hand you the life you dream about. You must take it. You must claim it. You must become it. This is your moment. This is your turning point. This is where the weak fall back and the powerful rise. So rise. Rise now. Rise without apology, without fear, without hesitation. Rise and become the person no one can manipulate, no one can control, no one can break. Rise and take command of your life before someone else does, because power belongs only to those who claim it.